We now come to some general discussions on the usage of the Jantar Mantar observatories built by Sir Jessing early in the 18th century, and Soumya from Design Roots, who are making a production which is looking at virtual restoration of the observatory instruments in Delhi in particular, right? And so she has some questions about the general observatory usage.
The first being the general purpose of the instruments in terms of the time when they were built in. So, exact usage in medieval times.
So the exact usage as to why Jessing built it. Essentially, it was his idea to build this, and he was the one who had implemented it. And why did he do it? One of the questions is, why did he set out to do? In general, kings were not so interested in such issues. He had a specific interest in astronomy, and he had an interest and enough competence to have had used the existing theoretical frameworks that he could grasp from different schools, and from those theoretical frameworks, when he was trying to obtain information about the celestial sky at his times. He wanted to know the position of the sun and the moon and so on from calculated elements, and look at what's observationally there and see how well they match. And he wanted that confidence that, okay, given a theoretical framework, he will be able to now say the position of the sun and moon and so on over the coming times, make the calendar accordingly, and so on. And he found that when he used this theoretical framework and then made this prediction for position of the sun and the moon, he found certain discrepancies in the time of eclipses and so on. And his thought then was that perhaps the existing theoretical framework as such, overall framework, might be good to use. Perhaps some small corrections are needed in this framework, and these corrections then he could implement through taking thorough measurements for his time at one time. So what are called ephemeris tables he wanted to construct. Position of all the celestial objects at a given time and place them as tables which could be consulted, and then use the theoretical framework with these tables as one starting point, and then make calculations for the coming time, future times. So this is what he wanted to do. He set out to do this, and then he first tried to do it with smaller instruments, brass instruments and so on. And he found that certain problems were there with these small instruments. That he was not able to achieve the accuracies that he was hoping for. And his idea was larger and larger instruments would give better accuracies. And it's true that when he would build larger and larger instruments, he would get better accuracies in these measurements, measurement of time and measurement of positions and so on. Well, the related question to this, as to why were these observatories and these masonry instruments constructed, a modern day astronomer looks at it and then asks, why were these constructed at a time when the telescope had already been invented? And so positional astronomy measurements were being done in a different way for about 100 years by that time. So why did it? So if we look at this question in detail, it's like the beginnings usage of the telescope opened up new views, revolutionary new views. When Galileo used the telescope and looked at celestial objects, in particular at the planets, he found revolutionary views. So the beginning usage of the telescope opened up new visions of the sky, and slowly instrumentation parts became added to the telescope. To begin with, telescope could not be used for measuring positions in the sky accurately. It had to have additional instrumentation which could then measure the exact positions of objects in the sky. So that instrument, over the next 100 years, that instrumentation was slowly taking place. Now Jessing did want to know all that was existing in the world that he could get access to. He sent also a mission to Portugal, Spain, and to find out what were the more recent happenings in astronomy at that time. And from this mission he also got a telescope, but it's quite likely that that telescope was not one which was meant for position measurement. So if he did not have access to certain instrumentation, like micrometer, screw gauge, vernier and so on attached to the telescopes. So his instruments were gigantic with naked eye. Perhaps they could have had added accuracy if they had telescopic sights, what are called telescopic sights. So that he did not become aware of, he did not implement that. But beyond that, he did achieve accuracies which for him they were satisfactory to make the panchang and so on. In fact, to this day, what were the measurements that he had done are the basis of the panchang calculations. He might have had got better accuracies than this if he had implemented more recent innovation. But on the other hand, his instruments are standing till today, and they are very, if one gets to know how to use them, they're very user friendly. They're very nice for teaching. So, and one of the things he had said as to why he has built this observatory, he specifically says that he is building this so that he can make these measurements for himself, be satisfied that he has accurate values, and he's also building these so that the armed janta can come and make these measurements for themselves, learn how astronomers do these complex measurements and feel satisfied about that. And in India, for some reason, these become important to everyone, these measurements. Of course, that reason is a little sad reason, the reason being that people combine astronomy with astrology and then they mix it up with their daily lives and so on. But whatever that is, whatever may be the reason, but in general people would want to know, and more people also get interested in knowing what science, where science is moving. So it's a very, very nice thought he had, that he should make these observations accessible to the common public.